Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, I reported my former landlord to the IRS for tax fraud as revenge for him making up lies on me to keep my deposit. He had to file for bankruptcy and lost his condo. I'm glad he lost his ducking house. I found this guy on Craigslist a few years ago. I like renting condos from private owners as opposed to renting apartments. Typically, by renting a condo, it's safer, you have more caring residents, you get to have a luxury apartment-style home with all the amenities, and you can negotiate pricing, etc. I am an excellent tenant and anyone who I have rented from will tell you that. I paid a $1,000 deposit to move into this guy's condo. I was on a year lease. He lives in another state, but we were on the same time zone. On month 8 of my lease, I came home to a door that wouldn't open. I couldn't get the door unlocked for crap. I had 2 keys on me. As much as I tried to turn them, I couldn't. One of the keys even broke in the lock. I waited 2 hours. I called, texted, and emailed my landlord and he did not pick up. I thought maybe he had someone to change the locks for some reason. I honestly didn't know what to think and had no one to help me. The lady who lived across from me saw me in distress as she was going into her apartment. I had never seen her, but she asked me if I were okay, and I explained to her that I couldn't get into the apartment. She told me that she knows of an on-call locksmith. She gives me his number. I tell her thanks and reach out to my landlord a few more times. No response. I had no choice but to call the locksmith, plus I had to pee like hell. The locksmith arrives and could not get the door unlocked with my key. He says he can replace the lock for like $100. I told him I was renting a condo and couldn't get in touch with the owner and didn't know when would be the next time I could get in touch with him. After he took the lock off, he told me it was faulty. So, he replaced the lock. I told the landlord this via email and text and voicemail and told him that I could send him copies of the keys if he wanted. Okay, so fast forward to the end of my lease. I demand that he does a walkthrough with me. He said he wouldn't. I told him that if he didn't do a walkthrough, I would be notifying the condo office, as he did not have permission to sublease by the association. He then had a friend to serve as his proxy to come meet me and walk through the unit. The place was spotless. I know how to clean. I took multiple photos and videos and showed his proxy, who is a police officer, the unit. Actually, they are both police officers who used to work together. We both literally tested all the appliances, faucets, checked the blinds, carpets, hardwood, everything. His proxy gave me the okay and said that everything looked great. I give his proxy the keys and later that night left for my new city. So fast forward to a month later, I haven't heard from him about my deposit. He ignored all my emails and phone calls. He finally gets back with me 2 months after I moved out and has all this ridiculous, made-up shit about how I damaged his unit. Broken blinds. Scratches on the hardwood floor. He made it seem like I damaged his door by getting the lock replaced. He said there were scratches on the outside of his door. Rust here and there. Broken dishwasher. Broken sink. Oven was broke. Broken dryer. SMFH, just all ducking lies. I would never leave a unit in that condition. He sent me an itemized list of all the charges that magically came out to be $1,000. The same as my deposit. He was always planning to keep my money. He wanted that money to either ball on it or upgrade his condo. I hated him. I decided I wasn't going to go to court because I had moved to a different state and live alone, but I thought of something. He rented to me under the table and likely didn't claim my rent payments as earned income. I had all my wire transfers on my bank statement. I had his routing and account number and a copy of his driver's license as we agreed to swap IDs when I signed the lease to make sure I wasn't getting scammed. I found his out-of-state address online, gathered all my bank statements, gathered his bank account numbers, and made a report with the IRS. About a few years later, I check up on things and that bastard lost his condo and lost everything he owned in bankruptcy. I paid for and downloaded his court records and saw proof that he lost everything including his condo and cars and had his bank account seized. I'm not sure if he has gone to jail or anything, but I'm so glad that bastard got his ducking karma. He stole money from me that I gave him to rent a condo and he ends up losing that same condo to bankruptcy. Duck him and anyone who calls him a friend. He can rot for all I care. The next story is titled, Ignore Me Asking for My Deposit? That's cool, you can just pay me triple then. TLDR. My landlord decided to ghost me when it came time to pay me my rental deposit back. The law clearly states I can sue for up to 3 times the original deposit if I'm not paid in a timely manner, so I used this to punish them for their unwarranted dickery. A few years back I rented a duplex. I lived in it, I moved out. Nothing special. During the move-out inspection they did the standard landlord thing and looked for any excuse to deduct from the deposit. They knew from the lease agreement that we had pets, so of course the first thing the inspector says entering the house is, I smell animals, we'll have to charge you the cost of getting a special pet odor removing cleaning service. We were right there to call him on his bullshit with the invoice and paperwork from the cleaning service that already did a comprehensive clean, including a pet odor package. He quickly dropped that bullshit. Then he found a carpet stain which, despite everyone's best efforts, never completely came out. Fair enough. We were relieved that they didn't take much off for that at all. Then he took a little more off for having to patch some holes where we hung photos. In the end we were still owed at least 80 to 90% of our original deposit. They also told us we need to keep the utilities running in our name for a week after we move out so they can do some work on the place. This wasn't in our lease as something that's required of us, but I was nice and extended my utilities an extra week for them. Then they told us to extend the utilities another 2 weeks because they weren't done. Enough was enough, so I told them no. They gave us a statement of how much our deposit was, how much they deducted and for what, and how much was left over for us. By the books, until they didn't actually deliver it. I tried giving them the benefit of the doubt, but they had our mailing address for our next place, and it never turned up. I called them, emailed them twice a week asking if they've mailed it or if I can just pick it up from their office. No answer, no reply. They were completely ghosting us. We found out that the state law says if your deposit, minus deductions, isn't paid within 30 days of vacating, you can take your landlord to court for up to 3 times the amount of the original deposit, no deductions. We read and studied this law well and concluded that there's no reason we shouldn't be able to fight this and win, no lawyer required. $90 filing fee later and our landlord was served notice of our intent. Then whoa, wade no. After all that ghosting for 45-ish days, the day after we filed our petition, we get an email from the landlord saying he sees that we're wanting to take legal action but has a tremendous offer for us to settle out of court. The full deposit, no deductions, plus the $90 filing fee back. Duck their low ball offer. I replied reminding them that I can force them to pay 3 times the deposit, but I will settle out of court for just twice the deposit. Did I need to settle? I don't know, the law says up to 3 times. So I guess I was worried that if it actually went to court, a judge might decide that the circumstances aren't bad enough to warrant that much more money for me, so it might not be worth the trouble. Twice was good enough for me and making them lose money over it was what I was going for anyways. They agreed immediately and said I could pick up the check at their office. When I stopped by, what still confuses me to this day was that they still insisted on showing me the report of all the things wrong with the house that they had to deduct from the original deposit, like I gave a duck at that point. That ship had sailed. They were paying me twice the full deposit anyways. They could stick their petty, unfulfilled deductions up their ass. Closing thoughts. Do landlords do this often? Why would they just blatantly withhold your deposit without giving a reason? Do they think people won't fight for it back? Do the people who don't fight it outnumber the ones that do? Meaning they can make a profit by withholding everyone's deposit by default? The next story is titled, My dad was just fired today after telling his employer that he was diagnosed with cancer. My dad is 64 years old and has worked for a large private university in Virginia for over 3 years as a director of research and technology. I'm not sure if it matters, but his annual income from this job was well into the 6-figure range. Last month he was diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer, which he is currently undergoing treatment for. A week ago, he informed his direct supervisor about his diagnosis, which, in his words, prompted a weird response from his boss. This morning, he was informed that his position had been eliminated effective immediately and was told to pack up his effects and exit the building by noon. He has received nothing but excellent performance evaluations from multiple supervisors, with no derogatory marks for his entire time at the university. His severance package is 4 months of pay, with no medical benefits other than COBRA. In his health, he's clearly worried that he will not be well enough to look for work for some time. If it matters, he is also a disabled veteran. My father is very stoic man, and initially said he doesn't want to seek legal assistance. At the urging of me and other family members, he's now considering it. From my cursory description of what happened, does he have any legal recourse to seek a lawsuit for wrongful termination, age discrimination, protected class discrimination, disabled veteran? Any advice would be much appreciated. Thank you in advance. Update. Thank you for all the responses so far. I spoke to my dad again and here are some further details. He has 21 days to sign the severance agreement, but he did not sign it. He did not apply for FMLA. Although his position was eliminated, a new, younger person is being brought in to do his exact same job with a different title. The last story is titled, "You Won't Pay Rent? Good luck finding a new apartment." So, this happened to me about 10 years ago in a big city on the West Coast. Hopefully this counts as pro-revenge. I had just finished grad school and was looking for a way to cut down on rent in an already expensive rental market. Now, mind you, I was young, desperate, and inexperienced with roommates at the time, and this was a huge life lesson for me and hopefully for my roommate too. I placed an ad for a roommate on Craigslist, which in hindsight wasn't a smart move. Enter bad roommate. Bad roommate was a few years older than me and at first seemed really cool with a stable job as a licensed masseuse. After interviewing her, hitting it off really well and getting to know each other for about a month, we rented a loft in downtown around October with the agreement rent/utilities would be split. Around the time our first rent was due, November. Bad roommate said that her work had been slow, and she would pay rent in the next 2 weeks. Luckily, I had enough in savings, so I covered rent. Well, the 2 weeks came and went and still no rent. When I asked her about the rent, she yelled obscenities and accused me of being abusive and harassing her. No kidding. While claiming she didn't have money for rent, she would be out of the house from around 9 a.m. until around 2 a.m. visiting friends. All of this nonsense continued on, as well as other things such as stealing my food and breaking some of my belongings, including a bottle of wine that my recently deceased sister had gifted to me. Bad roommate's excuse was bad energy in the house while giving me a little smirk. Fast forward to the beginning of December and you guessed it, still no rent. This time, in addition to yelling obscenities, accusing me of being abusive, and breaking my stuff, bad roommate called the police on me, accusing me of making threats. The cops did not do anything as there was no evidence I did anything. For the record, I didn't. But they did give me a lecture about making threats and said next time they come out I could be arrested or forced to leave the residence. By this time, I was almost out of savings and was fearing eviction. Bad roommate had not paid rent since move-in. The final straw came when I came home from work to find her threatening my 2 cats who were cowering in the corner. I almost lost it, but due to what happened before with the police, I didn't want to poke the fire. This is when I remembered the officer saying I could be forced to leave the residence and a light bulb went off in my head. Now the revenge part. I called my best friend whose father, best friend's dad/attorney, was an attorney. After a phone consultation with him, he told me to pay up the rent and utilities through December and then simply surrender my key, garage remote, etc. with a signed note saying that I surrender possession of the property with a specified date. I snapped a photo of this note and left it with the secretary in the management office. I then proceeded to sign a new lease with the last of my savings. 1 week before Christmas, while bad roommate was out visiting friends, I packed up all of my belongings and left the house pretty much empty except for the little bit of belongings she had. A little bit of food in her bed. After about 2 days of angry voicemails, texts, and missed calls from bad roommate telling me what a horrible and irresponsible person I was to do this, boom, dead silence until April. In April, I was served with a summons for breach of contract for abandoning the lease by the landlord. I contacted the attorney, aka best friend's dad, and filed a response to the court with a hearing date set in late May. I showed up to the hearing with my friend's dad, attorney, and his 2, I'm guessing they were assistants. Bad roommate was also there looking smug, think wine bottle incident smirk. Next thing I know, the other attorney announces they are dismissing me from the lawsuit since I surrendered possession of the property, but they were not dismissing it against bad roommate. Bad roommate's face went gaunt, the smirk disappeared, and it was priceless. After some back and forth with her almost getting held in contempt of court for outbursts, the judge ruled against my roommate with full judgment awarded to the landlord. The first cherry on top? Best friend's dad represented me pro bono. The final cherry on top? I came to find out a month later via an angry voicemail from bad roommate that after being kicked out of a friend's house while couch surfing her credit was trashed, she had an eviction on her record, and subsequently could not get another apartment, and that again I was a horrible irresponsible person. I never heard from her again afterwards, but she was on the news a few months later, mugshot and all, for trashing a convenience store. Last I heard she moved to Las Vegas. In the end my credit did take a small hit. Even though the suit was dismissed, the debt was put into collections and reported to the credit bureau. For the next 4 years I tried unsuccessfully to have it removed. At the 4-year anniversary of the lawsuit, I petitioned the credit bureau under the advice of my friend's dad/attorney to clear my record, as the statute for filing suit had expired at the 4-year mark. Failure to comply with the request would result in a lawsuit against the credit bureau for slander of credit. To be honest, I just followed his instructions, not knowing what I was even talking about. A couple days later I received a call that my record had been cleared. Long story, but in the end, it was worth it to get back at an otherwise horrible person. Thanks for listening.